Hi, and welcome to my sewing room. My name's Leah, and today I'm updating you on week 33 and 34 of my UFO challenge, where I've challenged myself to sew at least 15 minutes a day on my UFOs. My past 2 weeks was spent with a lot of family and not a lot of time in the sewing room. I did try to snag a few sewing times here and there, but I didn't actually time how much I got done. But overall, I made some good progress. Last Wednesday morning, I had some family fly in on a red-eye flight. So while they were catching up on some sleep, I took a few minutes to work on my Pythagoras Lute project. I added the next section onto each wedge. Again, I took my time to pin each point and to line up the edges of the pattern. I didn't want to have any angles get off and end up with some wonky wedges. I also decided to tear the paper off after I sewed two sections together. It wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be to remember which section was which after I sewed them. And some of those seams are going to be easier to sew without the paper, and I can still line them up okay without it. Thursday, I squeezed in just a little bit more sewing while I was waiting for everybody to get up, but that was the last time I spent in the sewing machine for the next week, as we were on our way to North Carolina to visit more family. And when we came back from North Carolina, I spent the rest of the week enjoying my adult children who were here. And for the days that we were home, I didn't get into the sewing room because my youngest son took up residence in my sewing room for sleeping while his siblings took over his room. And I didn't want to wake him up in the morning with the noise of a sewing machine. But even though I didn't get any time at the actual sewing machine, I did make progress on some of my UFOs. Instead of sewing, I did some cutting. I cut the fabric for 5 quilts that were on my UFO list, and I got them ready to sew. So for days when I just want to sit and sew, all I have to do is pull out one of these, and I'm ready to go. I even made a quick video about it. I'll put a link to that in the description below if you want to check it out. Since I was in a cutting mood, I also went ahead and cut out the borders for my Sunset at Sea UFO. The borders are the last thing I need to add for this project, and then I can move it over to the quilting pile. I also took some time these past 2 weeks to update my UFO spreadsheet. I updated the columns on my progress on all the 5 projects that I cut up, and I added the extra quilt tops I made this spring to the list. It's been over 3 months since I worked on them, so I decided it was time to officially put them on my UFO spreadsheet. And when I was going through my kits trying to decide which one I wanted to cut up, I noticed I didn't have a couple of them on that UFO list either, so I added those too. That put my UFO count up to 67. That's more than I started with at the beginning of the year. I really hope I don't come across any other UFOs, because I really want to knock that number down. My last house guests left on Monday, but that was also my husband's birthday, so again, there was no sewing on Monday. But on Tuesday, I did get back to the sewing machine, and I was able to sew up the sections K and L to each other of my Pythagoras Lute project. Looking back, I didn't get a lot of time at the sewing machine, but I did make a lot of progress on my UFOs. I was able to cut up 5 projects and get them ready to sew. I cut the borders out for my Sunset at Sea quilt, and I updated my UFO spreadsheet. I made a little bit of progress on a lot of projects, which is pretty good to me. You don't get to see a lot of progress in one project this way, but things are still moving forward with my UFOs. And that's the main goal, is to whittle down all these UFOs. For next week, I'd like to see this Pythagoras Lute quilt closer to being finished. So I'm going to focus all my UFO sewing on that project this coming week. I'll also be working on my mini bolt challenge projects. The pink Allison glass fabric won the vote for this challenge, and I've been having a good time coming up with ways to use that fabric all the way down to the last scrap. I'll also be finishing up some of my Island Boutique Ambassador projects, so I won't have any extra UFO time to sew this week. But I'm hoping my 15 minutes a day on my UFOs will help me at least get most of my wedges done. So come back next week and see how far I actually get. And let me know in the comments below how you keep your sewing momentum going when you don't have access to your sewing machine. Do you have side projects? Do you have hand projects? What keeps you going? Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, happy sewing.